Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Constructive Criticism. I am your special guest host, still filling in for Spencer Mason. And I'm joined by my top two silver pros in Utah, Michael Hinderacher.
Oh man, top two. You know there are three silver pros in Utah, so
Oh,
you're
no.
you're really throwing some shade here.
So, how does this help? I only know two of you, so it's really no shade to the other person. Is it
Well,
Alex, the other one?
Oh, yeah, Alex is the other one.
Okay, all right. I've never really interacted with Alex. I'm sure he's a great person.
He certainly is.
Yeah, but you know who else is great? Oasis Games. Oasis Games has some of the best deals. Rivals of Ixalan is dropping this week, Michael. There was a new ban list. You have to go get your cards for your new energy variant. You go to Oasis Games. You can use hashtag code WouldThatBeGood, and you can get 15% off your order. And you can also use code CCMTG, and I think you get like 4% back.
Yeah, CCMTG will get you 4% back on every order. Would That Be Good? Will get you 15% off your first order. And now is as good a time as any. We have a modern Pro Tour coming up, so you can try to buy something before it takes a big jump. And, you know, we got this all of a sudden fresh and exciting standard format.
Yeah, it's awesome. The standard's great. You know, when I used my code back in the day, I used it for Modern. I bought Titan Shift, and, you know, I almost qualified for the Pro Tour playing that deck. So
I mean, that's a deal, though. Like, if you can find a Modern deck that you just want to buy in one shot, one of the things I will say about Oasis that's nice compared to a lot of local, like, just smaller stores in general, is that the stock on, like, commons and uncommons is very good. So if you're trying to just actually buy an entire deck, it's a very reasonable place to shop.
no, I definitely agree with that. One of the things that I've always liked about Oasis is, like, if there's like an odd kind of card I'm looking for, I can always find it there, right? Like, if I need Mind Wrenches, you guys have them. If I need Foil Sacred Cats, you've got them. You know, I was looking for Hostage Takers, and you had some in Korean, but I've got Hostage Takers now. So
yeah, we have a lot of stuff. We go through a lot of product, and we buy a lot of cards, and we trade for a lot of cards. So it's the inventory is good, and the 15% off is definitely a really good deal. So anyone who hasn't used that yet, always a good option.
Yeah, and our other sponsor, the Mana Base. We like to joke a lot about Nikachu and other content creators that they have over there, but they really do support up-and-coming content creators, and they have good prices on their sealed product. That's something Oasis Game doesn't offer our other sponsor. So you can go there, get some sealed product, start drafting for your RPTQs. There's a lot of limited this format, Michael. Like, all the events that matter are limited, except for, like, Memphis.
I got to start drafting.
Yeah?
I know, I got to start drafting, too. It's always daunting coming into new sets and trying to figure out how you should be trying to draft them. But definitely a good place to pick up some sealed product, and a good place to check out some content from some other people who are up and coming.
I definitely agree. I've got a GP this Friday that's limited, so I'm right there with you.
Are you stoked? Like, I kind of wish I was playing.
Yeah? You wish you were there?
I kind of hate team GPs. It's like the value is really bad, and it's a lot harder to get pro points.
Yeah.
But you know, it's a lot of fun regardless. I am a little bummed not to be playing this one.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Like, I'm playing with my friend Trey locally, and Danny from Limited Time Only is flying in. So we're gonna be there. We've got about, I think, 2 other group of local people going up there. So it's gonna be a fun weekend. You know, hopefully pick up some pro points, maybe a little cash.
Yeah, it sounds like a good time for sure.
Yep. Well, let's move on to our Patreon shouts. One of the things that we do is when you subscribe as a patron, we give you a shout out. And Michael, I'm just no hope of saying this person's name correctly, so I'm gonna leave it up to you.
I'm gonna give it a shot. But you know, bear with me. So our newest patron is Suban Rubasingham, and
I think that was right.
You know, I'm happy to know if I butchered your name, but that's the best attempt I can make. So, you know, a way cooler name than mine, but unfortunately a little bit tricky the first time around.
Yeah.
And then we have a patron question,
which is a benefit of being a patron of the show. I think any amount, is that correct?
Yeah, I think any amount can leave a patron question. But you can post it on Patreon, or if you're in the Constructed Critics group, you are welcome to post these there as well. And this one says, so I'm trying to learn different types of decks and pick them up to increase my deck range. When first learning a deck, I look for articles on the deck to see what people think about it. My question is, when there are many varying opinions on card choices and sideboards, for example, Death Shadow, how do I optimally use all the information that's available instead of being confused in the storm of online opinions?
I really like this question.
And I think this is a really good question. Yeah. It's really good because I think for a lot of really linear decks, it's at least like the main decks are basically set in stone. Mm-hmm. And I think that one of the things that really makes a lot of sense when you're looking at some of these decks that are a little bit less linear, for example, something like Grixis Death Shadow, where you really have a lot of control over card choices. And I mean, to be fair, there's a pretty good core of probably 50, 54 cards, something like that are pretty set in stone. But those last 6 or so make a pretty big impact. You know, deciding how you want to split your removal spells, whether you want to play Temur Battle Rages or Terminates or Lilianas or, you know, extra discard spells, whatever. There's you have a lot of control over how your deck is going to play and what matchups are going to be positively and negatively affected.
Yeah.
So I think this is a really good question. And what I would say is that you probably have to pick sort of one voice that you seem to align with, and at least initially start from their point of view. Like, you know, if you really like stuff that Jerry Thompson does, or Sam Black, or, you know, one of these guys who's really good, maybe start with their list, and often their reasoning is pretty well explained and thought out. And from there, once you actually have some games under your belt, you can sort of decide whether their methodology is working for you or not, whether you need to change things up.
I agree with that a lot. I also think having a game plan when you're looking at all the sideboard options, right? So one thing I like to do is when I'm playing a deck that has this kind of storm of information that we're talking about, is I will read a lot of the deck lists, and I'll try and figure out what their game plan is, and I'll try and find a game plan that I like and play cards that work with that game plan, right? So if you like to, you know, play your Death Shadow deck super control-y, right, and you lean more that way, Temur Battle Rage might not be the card that you want because you just don't know how to play with it at first. So figuring out your game plan and playing with that, I think, is another important thing.
Yeah, and even more than that, I would say, rather than just figuring out what you want, it's understanding why you might want that, right?
Yes.
Why would someone want Temur Battle Rage in the deck versus more Lilianas? Like, what are the matchups? What are the situations that make someone lean one way or another? And I think that if you start with good information and then work to fill in the gaps on your own, or through picking the brain of, you know, someone who you can get responses from, I think that kind of stuff, just having like more specific information or more ability to either find answers, or either on your own or through asking other people, finding answers to the more specific questions you have about the deck, that's probably the best way to really figure out why you might make certain choices in deck building.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I hope that helps with the Patreon question. It's a really interesting topic. I don't have anything else to say. Michael, do you have anything you want to cap that off with?
No, that's about it. I think that just recognizing that more information isn't always better is a really astute and good first step.
Oh, that's so topical with Twitter today. Oh,
and basically just like just understanding that there does come a point where like you have enough information and it's figuring out how to apply it.
Yep, I agree there. All right, so let's move on to our always improving a moment. One of the things about this podcast is we believe if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. So we like to talk about how we're always been improving. And Michael, how have you been improving this week? You've got a Pro Tour coming up, a modern sealed one, or modern draft one.
Yeah, so honestly, I probably got a little worse this week, but part of that is in preparation for putting my nose to the grindstone a little bit here over the next couple of weeks. And some of that is making sure that you don't just burn yourself out by going a little too hard too soon. So I feel pretty good about where I'm at in Modern. I have probably 2 or 3 decks that I'm looking at pretty closely at this point. But I had a pretty slow week in terms of really spending a lot of time playing Magic, having just come off of playing Grand Prix the weekend before. So I took it pretty easy this week, and now with Rivals of Ixalan being available on Magic Online, I'll probably have to, you know, get into the Limited a little bit and see where it takes me. But it was nice to have a little bit of a lazy your week in terms of prep.
Yeah, I kind of had a similar thing. So I live in Tennessee, so we had a snowstorm snowstorm. That's the biggest air quotes I can give you on Friday, to the point where work was shut down, which is basically anything. Like tomorrow, it's supposed to snow an inch, and I'm not going into work. Like it's already been canceled, everything like that. Part of that has to do with my job and what I do, but you get the idea. And so I got to relax a little bit on Friday, and I was able to do the pre-release and one sealed league with you and Danny online. And it's weird because like I was trying to learn stuff, but both times we opened these absurd bomb rares. So when we played, we opened the Immortal Sun, right?
Oh yeah, God, that card is so stupid.
It just won us these games. It was absurd. And we also had Ravenous Trooper Copper, but we never drew it. And like we had all this, we had an absurd deck, right?
No, but it was really the Immortal Sun.
No,
like,
we never
our
drew
deck
the
was
Our
fine.
deck was great. Yeah. Well, we had a lot of like bomby cards, right?
Yeah, but like the deck was fine. But all I really learned was that the Immortal Sun was better than I thought it was, and I already thought it was very good.
Yeah, 100% agree. So like, it's like, all right, I have a chance to practice with these two silver pros, do this thing. And it's like, oh, we learned this bomb mythic's really good. How great a use of my time.
Yeah, like, well, shocker.
Yeah.
Who would have thought?
Exactly. And so I'm like,
Yeah,
I'm gonna do the
I kind of thought the same thing.
Yeah, so I was like, all right, I'm gonna do the pre-release. The pre-release is not the most competitive thing, but you can get some play, like like you get some games in, see how cards feel. And I opened Tetsamok, and all I learned is Tetsamok is really good. Like if you play Tetsamok, you're gonna win a lot of your games, right? So
yeah, it's basically Glorybringer.
Yeah.
Like ×2.
Yeah. Ironically, both I had it in my hand twice, and my opponents played that unplayable 3-man discard spell, and we're like, game one, they're like, discard your Tetsamok, and I'm like, no, and I was still able to win games, so that says something. but
right, but
yeah.
I mean, assuming that your opponent's like, I mean, so one thing I actually do think is interesting about that in particular is it might be correct to side in some kind of unplayable discard spell against.
I think that's true, but that's why I referenced it was game one.
Right. No, I mean, but maybe you can take something away from that still, even though. Well, maybe their situational awareness wasn't where it should have been.
Yeah, what I learned is Tetsamok's insane, and you got to do something, or it's just going to come down and you can't win the game. It blows you out so hard. But
no, it's not like a beatable card if you actually put counters on anything first.
Yeah, it's not reasonable. It was. Yeah, well, we've talked enough about it, but regardless, it was weird because it's like I tried to, but I didn't really get a whole lot out of it. And then like I got home and like instead of drafting, I was like, ooh, I really want to play new standards, so I went on and get a standard league. So and we'll get to that in a little bit. Yeah, but I plan to do a lot of drafting and some sealed this week, so I'm excited.
Honestly, I would spend some time generating actual team sealed pools because I would say the biggest difference between normal sealed and team sealed, like there are some decks that are very hard to open in standard sealed, like Merfolk was not an especially common deck to open in a single sealed pool, but when you're playing with double the pool, it was in almost every single team sealed pool that I had at least. So
we think the decks are going to be closer to draft decks, so the plan is to kind of draft more, but to also do some of that.
It's possible. I would just actually do some practice team sealed pools.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we're going to be able to get everyone together and do that. That is on the ballot. I don't know what the word is.
The docket.
The docket. Boom. That's what I needed you for right there. That's what you get for getting someone that's on a pro team. Lingering Souls. Got all the words down. But that's it for this week. I'm excited for this week, and hopefully it goes well. Michael's just laughing at me.
Oh, it sounds like a good time.
Yeah.
Team GPs are a lot of fun, and Team Limited is great.
Yeah, I'm excited to play it. It's going to be a blast. But we're going to move on to the Deck Doctor, Deck of the Week, so whatever you want to call it this week. So we don't have any power rankings, because there's a brand new stand format. There are a bunch of bannings, right? But we do have...
They banned everything.
In case you didn't know, for what it's worth, we're going to say this and we won't bring it up again after this. They banned Attune, Rogue Refiner, Ramming Up Ruins, and Rampaging Ferocidon.
Oh, no, I mean, it's like, I don't know that I'm not complaining about it. It was just like a lot of cards to ban at the same time.
Oh, no, I agree. But some people aren't like as in tune with things, you know what I mean? They're not in tune with...
Sure.
No one can be in tune with the Aether now, but, I probably came across good on the podcast, but but
well, if that gets edited out, it's okay. We'll live.
Yep, but
I enjoyed it.
So so there's a brand new standard format right now, right, Michael? Like we have like brand new weird decks, right? Teamer's gone. You can't play Attune. You can't play Rogue Refiner. Mono Red might still be there, but it's going to look like Donald Smith's red deck from Worlds, which I'm convinced he did that on purpose. I'm convinced Donald banned those cards so Lannery Storm was the right card to play in red.
You think it was the long con, so that in
Yes.
retrospect people will be like Donald Smith was just a visionary before his time?
Exactly. So there's like 6 months where Ramanov Red's really good, but there's going to be 18 months where Lannery Storm's insane. And they're going to be like, look at this guy. You can't fire him. He needs to keep his job or re-sign him on his contract. I'm on to your plans, Donald.
He could see the future.
Yeah.
It's really unfair.
Exactly. Yeah, we need this guy on the play design team. No, but so standard's way different. So we have a sweet deck. And Michael, I think what should we call this deck?
I think I would call it something along the lines of Rug Midrange.
Rug Midrange. Yeah, I like the sound of that too. So I'll read the deck list real quick. This is my deck. So I made it today. It's a little brew I've been working on.
It's pretty unique, honestly.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Maybe the word I'd say.
It's just one of these decks that it's really versatile. So why don't we read the deck list?
Yeah. Well, enough for the people at home. If you're watching the video, you can see it. We have 4 Long Tusk Cub, 4 Servant of the Conduit, 4 Jade Light Ranger, 4 World Virtuoso, 4 Bristling Hydra, 4 Glorybringer, 2 Abrade, 1 Essence Scatter, 4 Harness Lightning, 1 Nissa Steward of the Elements, 1 Supreme Will, 2 Chandra Torch of Defiance, 1 Confiscation Coup. Then for mana, we have 4 Aether Hub, 4 Botanical, 4 Forest, 2 Island, 2 Mountain, 2 Rootbound Crag, 2 Sheltered Thicket, 4 Spiral Bluff Canal. And then for our sideboard, we hate Godfarer's Gift. So we have 3 Death Gorger Scavenger, 2 Chandra's Defeat, a Spell Pierce, 2 Naturalize, 4 Negate, another Nissa Steward of Elements, Supreme Will, and Confiscation Coup. Although I changed Nissa to Lifecrafter's Bestiary out of the sideboard, which I did not update on this list. So yeah, that's the list. That's my Rug mid-range deck.
It's really different than most of what we've seen before, and I think that like the idea of playing some of these cards that have the energy mechanic together is really fascinating.
Yeah, it is. I was thinking about like how can I play these really efficient energy cards and also get to play Negate and Glorybringer and Chandra, and then I landed here. No, but
it's just the work of a visionary.
Yeah. Some would say the Finkel of his time, but I don't want to put words in people's mouths. So
I feel like this almost had to be a Donald Smith creation.
Yeah, the genius behind Captain Lannery Storm. No, it's serious. Love you, Donald. But seriously, so this morning the bans happened, right, Michael? And I was thinking like, what do I want to do? Like, do I want to play Snake? And Snake was one of the first decks, and then I thought about Mardu, and I thought about Grixis Energy. Mardu Vehicles, that is. And I was like, man, like, because I was thinking about how I'm going to have to play GP Memphis, but before that I'm going to play PBDQs, and I think a lot of people are going to play Godfarer's Gifts and Control decks. And I was like, I really want to play Negate, right? And I was on my lunch, and I was like, well, what if I just played Teamer? And then we got to here. And so far, we're 3-0, 6-1 in a league. So it's been great.
Just with Teamer's sort of energy. Yeah, it's just like less energy, but still mostly energy.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually think this is kind of interesting. Jade Light Ranger is a card that I have kind of high hopes for.
Same.
It's definitely a little more hit or miss than a Rogue Refiner, but it has really high upside. And I mean, the biggest difference, honestly, in this deck in particular is probably mostly that Warlord Virtuoso is substantially worse.
Yes.
I mean, Long Tusk Cub can still kind of snowball. Harness Lightning, you have enough things to still make it usually Doomblade. Servant's going to still basically always make mana. But Warlord Virtuoso really is the card that takes a big hit. And obviously, as good as Jade Light Ranger is, it's probably on average worse than Rogue Refiner.
Yeah, I think on average it is a lot worse than Rogue Refiner, specifically in Team Energy. Because of the lack of the energy, right? Like, even when you bin a land and then, keep a good card on top or whatever, right? Like, or draw 2 lands, the energy really came up, and it came up a lot where it was like, wow, I can't, like, quite play my Confiscation Coup off my Servant, right? And have the energy to steal their thing, because I was down in energy. It was like, oh, wow, my Cubs aren't, like, beating as quickly, but they were still getting in there. So it's been really interesting. Obviously, I'm only, like, 7 total games in, 3 matches. So I'm going to be curious where it lands. But I still think this deck's a player. Like, whether it'll be the best energy deck or not, I'm not sure. But it has, some game to it. I'm curious to see, like, I don't know. Part of me just kind of wants it to be the best deck again. Just like, You know what I mean?
Just for the amusement of it all.
Yeah. Well,
I think like there are still some things here, and I think especially still Bristling Hydra and Glorybringer are very strong Magic cards. Yeah. Bristling Hydra especially, I don't think takes that much of a hit. It's probably going to kill less often in like 3 attacks or whatever, just because you're rarely going to have like 12 or 15 energy floating around in this style of deck. But I do think the Bristling Hydra is still a totally reasonable Magic card. Obviously, Glorybringer is still great. If anything, it's probably better because you're jamming it into opposing Whirler Virtuosos so much less often.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, Glorybringer.
So I'm curious to see. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm curious to see for sure.
I don't know. It's funny. Like when I told Spencer, like, hey, can we do this deck on the show? I didn't expect him to say yes, but I do think this deck has some legs to it, so I'm going to be interested to see where this goes. I'm really interested to see how the energy cards pan out, because they're still good. Like, we're still going to have a top deck that's energy. I'm almost positive. It's just kind of like, is it a Snake deck that's like lighter on energy? Is it the Grixis energy deck that kind of popped up at GP Atlanta last format? Where's it going to land? So
I think the Snake deck could be really good too. A lot of the Explore stuff is really nice with Snake.
Yes.
I could easily imagine something playing like Merfolk Branch Walkers, Jade Light Rangers, plus like Long Tusk Cubs and Glintsleeve Siphoners being pretty reasonable.
Yeah, no, we sketched one out, and we were talking about it in the Constructed Criticism group, which you can get in by being a patron of $5 or more. And a lot of our decks landed pretty close together in what they look like. And at this point, it feels like, well, there's like kind of a good core here. We just got to figure out, A, is it going to be good enough long-term to be playing, and B, like, figure out the last 6 slots. So,
yeah, I mean, it's mostly just like how many 2-drops do you actually want to play, that kind of stuff,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you could play anywhere between about 8 and about 20 2-drops.
Yes, easily.
Right? Mm-hmm. So it's interesting, for sure. There's a lot of stuff to work with, and, it's always fun to just get to mess around with stuff in a new format again.
Yep. All right, well, that is our deck of the week. We hope you enjoyed that. It's not anything too spicy. One thing is we didn't want to post some deck and then like people get excited and turns out that deck's garbage, and we didn't want anyone to like buy the cards. So
yeah. Well, I mean, part of it too is that like we haven't really, obviously, given that this happened this morning, it's not like we really have had a lot of time to put into standard decks at the moment, and it.
That being said, I haven't lost a match the standard format, so
that's
you can
true.
Trust
so
me
you'd
more
say,
than
you'd say your win rate is 100%. You plan on never losing again. Everything's great.
Yeah. I'm going to finish this league, stop, play PBTQ, win it, stop, play GP Memphis, win it, stop, done, over. All right, let's move on to the trading grounds this week. This week on the show, we've got an interesting trading grounds, Michael. It is. Excuse me, I got something stuck in my throat. It's the trading grounds is called Your Opponent's Turn and the Information Game. So, Michael, Magic is a game of information, and what we're doing can give and gain a lot of info. So we're going to talk about some of that stuff today. So, Michael, what's some ways where you're giving info to your opponent?
So, I think we should sort of break this down into like when you first start to play, when you've played a little more and you start to sort of get a little bit better, and then when you realize that you're maybe not as good as you thought you were. So when you're first starting to play, maybe you don't really think about what lands you're tapping for spells or what lands you're leaving up, right? So you might, be trying to convince your opponent you have a negate or something, but accidentally leave up not blue mana. Or you might not even think about trying to convince your opponent that you have negate, right? Something like that. So basically, you have 2 lands left over, but your first instinct doesn't have anything to do with actually representing any sort of spell.
Gotcha. Yep, that makes a lot of sense.
So so when we're just starting, we're maybe not really considering what information we're giving to our opponent at all, right? And I think that that's natural. And eventually, you start realizing that maybe it seems like your opponents have negate a lot because they keep representing it, right? And then at some point you realize they don't always have negate. They're just representing it even when they don't have it to try to get you to play around it. Or the opposite in some way. Like they're somehow masking what they have or presenting something different than what they have. And I think that then you sort of go through this stage where like you're convinced that you can bluff your opponents into believing you have something all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That like if we just represent negate mana, then they have to respect it.
Yes.
And
yeah.
then sort of eventually we can settle into more of a middle ground where we're not always trying to represent things, and we're understanding how you can represent something not only through something as simple as what mana we're giving up, but how things are represented through the plays you make through the course of a game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like that. It's about, just being aware of what you're doing, right? And being aware of what your opponent's doing when it really comes down to it, right?
Yeah, a lot of the time you'll get a lot of information based on how your opponent like decides to play their removal spells.
Mm-hmm.
Like whether they're playing them pre or post combat might indicate how many removal spells they have, or what specific cards they're afraid of, or what they're trying to play around.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like if your opponent only has one removal spell, they might be more likely to hold it until post combat, trying to save it for the most important creature. Whereas if they're just willing to fire it off pre combat, maybe they have another one backup or something along those lines. I think that there's a lot of information to be gained, not only from what your opponent is representing, but how they're valuing, like what resources they're placing the highest priority on in the game.
Right. Yeah. So, like, maybe for an example is you might have a Winding Constrictor in play, right? And your opponent uses a Harness Lightning on it, right? If you had like your mana tapped out, you could probably assume that your opponent, doesn't have a Braid, because in a Snake deck you would much rather a Braid early on than use Harness Lightning, because the threats grow, and a Braid will always do 3.
That's very true, and I think that's a really good point. So one of the things we're trying to do when we're playing is like glean information about what our opponent's hand consists of, and obviously they're getting a draw step every turn, so you can't always be perfect, and sometimes they may make a sort of unintuitive play that really throws off what you're thinking.
Yes.
I mean, sometimes that's even a good thing, right? Sometimes you'll be playing against someone very good, and they'll make an unintuitive play because they understand that you're good enough to understand what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, I think trying to read into what your opponent is representing, not only with their mana but with their actions in a game to this point, is one of the ways that a lot of us, I mean myself and everyone included, basically,
mm-hmm.
can continue to get better at Magic. Because one of the key things that you start realizing as you play more and more is that a lot of making the correct choices in complex board states comes down to sort of being able to eliminate. You're not necessarily going to be able to guess every single card in your opponent's hand, but sort of if you can eliminate a few cards in their deck, because obviously we basically know each other's deck lists, right? So
mm-hmm.
I know all the cards that you could have, but if I can eliminate a few of them, I'm a lot more likely to be able to think through the potential repercussions of any play that I do decide to make.
Yeah, being an active participant in your game, right? Like trying to figure out what they're doing, the cards they could have, the plays they can make.
Right, and even beyond that, it's just sort of like, so if I play this turn, I know they don't have a Glorybringer because they had 5 mana last turn and didn't spend it or whatever, right? So I don't expect this card to get, I think I can play a Chandra, and I think I can
take down.
I think it's one way or another. Like either I think I don't have to minus it because they aren't going to get that 4 damage on it, that extra 4 damage, or I think I can minus it because I don't think they're going to be able to get any damage on it, right? I mean, it depends on the board state more specifically, but like having some idea of what your opponent has in their hand based on both the mana they've held up and how they've played the game to this point
mm-hmm.
is really valuable in a situation like that. And even beyond that, your opponent might decide that, like, being able to decide that maybe your opponent is likely to either have a negate or not have a negate based on, if they've held up 2 mana each of the last 3 or 4 turns and are missing land drops, but you're not at a point where you think they'd be sandbagging lands, maybe they do have a negate for your Chandra if they haven't had a good target, right? I think just trying to consider what they could have in their hand and what their play patterns indicate they likely have in their hand really goes a long ways towards making correct decisions as the game gets more and more advanced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So I have a question for you, Michael, along this kind of line. So let's say you're playing Sultai Snake, right? Or you're playing Green Black Snake, let's say. So you have a snake
Sure.
to play, and it's turn 2, and I on turn 2 just abrade your snake on the main phase. Does that make you think like, oh, they're respecting blossoming defense? What goes through your head when that kind of thing happens?
It likely does. So, I mean, part of it is like you're just not necessarily going to get that much information out of that, but it might inform decisions you can make further down the road. If your opponent is going to play with a really high respect for blossoming defense, with a play like that, it might enable you to make a more aggressive play and represent a blossoming defense now because they didn't give you the chance to cast it. So there are sort of two interesting things in a sequence like that, right? So one of the things that I frequently think about that I don't know how common this is. I mean, I don't usually like spend a lot of time discussing Magic theory with other people, but if I'm in a situation where like I can choose to represent blossoming defense, but I don't have it, I'll often choose to tap out instead because you give your opponent so much more, like you're giving your opponent a lot more information by not casting a blossoming defense that you would definitely cast if you have it, than by tapping out and pretending like maybe you just thought this was a better option.
Interesting. Okay.
And I the abrade thing is kind of the same way, right? Like you say, oh, they're playing around blossoming defense, but not everyone will think of that in the same way. It depends on how important getting that creature off your board right now is to their game plan, because it might actually be better for them. There are some situations where playing their removal spell slower will actually give them more information about the contents of your hand. So if they had a ton of removal spells, they might actually be interested in trading an abrade for a blossoming defense earlier in the game rather than later in the game when it's representing lethal damage or like a Verdurous Gearhulk rather than just 2 damage straight up.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
So I think that's like a really interesting counterpoint, right? Like when you're making these plays, you can sort of consider that there's information. There's often a trade-off between avoiding blowouts and getting the most information possible. So like trying to represent blossoming defense can be powerful, but once you've been caught on your bluff once, it's really hard for you to represent it again in the next couple of turns, right?
Yeah, there's a high risk to it, right? Because if you're like representing it, and then they're just like, well, I'm like, because sometimes something that I see happens a lot is like people will represent something, but the opponent's in a situation where they can't respect it, right? It's like, well, I lose the game if you have blossoming defense here where you don't, right? So I have to play this abrade now. Right.
Right. And in those spots, a lot of the time it's better then, rather than trying to make them respect a spell that they can't actually choose to respect. It's a lot of the time better to tap out, because if you don't have it, it doesn't give your opponent perfect information in the same, like if you have a blossoming defense that's going to be lethal if you cast it, you give your opponent perfect information when you don't cast it. Right? They know that you're not just not casting it. You're not casting it because you don't have it.
God, yep.
Yeah, right, and I think that's like one of the really fascinating things with like, you can get, in this same way, I think you can get really punished for trying to represent a negate or an essence scatter or a harm, really trying to represent any kind of reactive spell. You have to be really careful with how you choose to present those kind of situations, because if you get too excited about what you can represent, it's easy to overlook the fact that you're actually giving your opponent a lot of information when you represent something, but then don't cast it.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense to me. So, Michael, what do you think about when your opponent, like, and this is something that's like not so much in the game, but it's part of the game, they physically react to draw steps, to your plays, things like that. What do you think about that kind of stuff? Since you talk about you don't do a lot of Magic theory, this is one of the things I feel like I talk a lot about with my people. So,
okay.
How do you feel about this?
Well, I'm curious what you think about it. When your opponent is like viscerally reacting to something, what does that make you think?
So a lot of it would depend on game state, right? So I'll give you a perfect example. So at GP Atlanta, I had to play Seth Mansfield in the X3 bracket in like round 13, and I played a Veraska, right? And he just he visibly sunk, like he looked like he was like a little disheartened, right? Not like, oh my gosh, ugh, like the guy you would see at F&M, but the rest of the game he had been very
Right.
composed. Yeah, comparative to like the Seth I had played against for the last 35 minutes or so, he was much different. So I knew that he had like nothing that could really answer this Vraska, and it was a big hindrance in the game plan. Obviously I knew that because of the board state too, but I knew that like he doesn't have a glory bringer. Like he doesn't have any way that can like pressure my Vraska, so I knew this Vraska was going to be very important, right? Another example might be when you play a card like Vraska, right, and you've seen your opponent be very reacting in a similar way earlier in the game, Michael, and they don't react to it. And you feel like, well, this card's supposed to be insane. Why aren't they reacting, right? They've been very like, oh, I didn't draw my lands. I'm very much like this. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Am I?
Yeah. So
Like,
I
I
get the idea that if it's a very different reaction from how they have acted for the rest of the game, that can sometimes mean something. But I would caution against reading too much into your opponent's specific body language or their like things they say. I mean, I always know that the worse the player I'm playing against is, the more I expect them to overreact to the spells that I'm casting, like to sort of pretend that they're dead when they're not. You know what I mean? Like, this is something that people love to do. They love to be like, Vraska, I can never beat that, and then they're just, they're just trying to get you to minus it or plus it or make some specific play to walk into what they want.
So I do that a lot, right? Like I'm very, so when I play Magic, because we've never played Magic against each other because we live across the United States.
That's true.
Yes,
That's
I'm a very animated person all the time in life, right? I'm very like talkative and outgoing and joking, and that happens in Magic too, right? And so lots of times I will act like I can never beat that card, right? Well, act like that card doesn't matter at all sometimes, right? Like I will just kind of go with where it's going with the game. So I definitely agree that a lot of people do that. Like I'm not the only one. I know that. But what I'm kind of curious is, because like I think that's a fair thing to say, is what about though when it's someone like Seth, right? Because I talked to other people about this, right? Where it's like, can you really like read into Seth slouch, like kind of showing a reaction to it? And I would say that you could, because he's such a high caliber of player, and it wasn't like he was overdoing it, right? It's not like he said he just kind of like his body language kind of moved, you know what I mean? Or do you feel like that's me reading into it too much?
Interesting.
Because he's such a high caliber of player, and it's not like he tried to trick me, he just like slouched a little.
My rule of thumb with this is basically anytime I think I'm playing against someone who's better than me, I try to just deadpan everything.
Yes.
With the thought that they are more likely to be better at this sort of game, like this sort of mind game, than I am. And that it's something that I will try to pull out sometimes against someone I think is susceptible to it, but that generally I try not to read into the body language or just the actual words of like players I consider to be good, because I just there's nothing for them to gain. There's no reason that they should tell you this, and if it's not just constantly part of what they're doing, there's no benefit to them saying, "Oh, I can never beat this Glorybringer."
We're going like ugh or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Right. Like, I mean, maybe this is just a reflection of the way that I think about Magic, but I'm trying to make the play that I think has a higher perceived upside basically all the time. And if I don't think I'm getting something out of an exchange like that, I wouldn't make that comment.
Interesting. Okay.
Like, I'm very, very wary of trying to read into someone else's body language.
That makes sense.
Because I mean, if you're reading into my body language, it's almost certainly some stupid gambit I'm trying to run, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, and maybe that's just giving other people not enough or too much credit, but I just basically assume that like there's no good reason for them to share information with you outside of I want you to know this for a specific reason.
It's interesting because like you go to that and like a lot of times my thing is, so like, how do I say this? If I was playing against you, right, and I knew you, and we sat down the GP, and you were to say something like that, even before this conversation, I would think Michael's trying to trick me or something. Because I just don't think you're the kind of person that would do that, right? But this is, I don't know, I'm trying to think of how to say this the right way, because I'm having a hard time putting my thoughts into words. But if, I don't know, I think that sometimes people give away too much, right? And they react too much and whatnot, just because that's just like how people are, right? People are just, they respond to things and they get frustrated. It shows, right? When they're angry, it shows. When they're annoyed, it shows. When they're happy, it shows. People, a classic psychological quote is, 50% of communication is nonverbal, right? So we speak with our bodies, but it could also be like the level we're at in Magic is very.
I think that's true, but I also think that most very good players have enough self-awareness and control over how they're presenting themselves and their emotions throughout a game. Just like most very good players don't tilt very hard.
Yeah.
It's very rare for great players to tilt super hard. And
yes.
I think there's a reason for that. I think that like being in control of your emotions and in control of what you are visibly displaying to your opponent is a skill. And basically, my thought is that the better the opponent I'm playing against, the lower the chance that I need that information like that is truthful, and the worse the opponent I'm playing against, the lower the chance that I need information like that.
I see. Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
That if you start getting in the habit of trying to poker face read people all the time, I think you're setting yourself up to run into people who are just better at reading poker faces than you are.
Michael,
or better at creating a poker face.
I learned is you have no faith in your poker face.
So, I mean, that's kind of true, but like,
you need some Gaga in your life.
I basically think
Gotcha.
I just end up feeling so much of the time like it's very challenging. Mostly because a lot of the time when you're playing against these people, you don't know them very well, right? You've maybe played them once before at some other GP, but like when I'm playing, I don't know. I guess like the most jovial person. Well,
okay. So finish your thought. We'll come back to that.
So the most jovial person I've ever played more than once now is Corey Burkhart, right? And when he's playing, he's like very happy, he plays fast, he plays tight, but he'll like talk out loud while he's playing a lot.
I'm sorry, I always get them. Is that Brad's brother, or is that the
no,
bushy-haired
Corey Baumeister?
Yeah, okay. I always get their names mixed up because Baumeister was the same way when I played him in Atlanta. But we also had an interesting start to the match. But
Corey's really jovial, a really nice guy. I really like playing against him. But when he is playing, he will like talk a lot of things out loud, not in like a I'm not being rude, nothing like that, nothing like he's obviously trying to get one over on you. But at the same time, you have to sort of look at what he's saying, right? And like he wouldn't say something if he wasn't okay with you hearing it.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you're playing against someone who you respect and you believe to be very good, it's sort of crazy to me that you could, on the one hand, say, "Hey, I think this person is great," but B, I don't believe that they know that the word diarrhea coming out of their mouth is hurting their game in some way, right? Like, or like, I don't think that you can say, "Hey, I think Seth is great," but I also believe his slouch.
Yeah, I did. I said that. I don't know.
Right? Because if he's great, you can't believe his slouch.
That's not true at all. Everyone has a moment of weakness, right? Like people can have moments, right? Like, so like I know, for example, Seth lost.
But that's a way tougher thing to say when you're talking about Seth Manfield than it is some guy at your PPTQ. That's all I'm saying.
That is 100% true. I'm not saying do what I did normally, but in the moment, I knew I would have bet your life on it, Michael. I would have bet your life, your human life, that I had the correct read there, and I did. I won that game. Like I forgot to use my Raska one turn. If I'm just being honest, that's how far ahead I got from her later in the game. But yeah, sure. Like.
I bet you before. My favorite story involves a local player thought seizing Owen Turtenwald when Owen has no cards in hand.
That's a pretty great story.
Which is some next level trolling.
So my favorite local store, this side tangent right there, is one of our local game store owners was playing against Todd Anderson at an SCG. No, it was a GP, and he's playing, and he goes, "I'll cast Thoughtseize on Todd," and Todd's playing like I think a burn deck, and Todd has no cards in hand too, and he's like, "Attack with my Chandra's Phoenix, you're dead on the next turn." And he's like, "Oh, I'm dead."
No, this one was good because then he beat Owen.
Oh, okay.
It was the
I
Thoughtseize
lost.
you with no cards in hand. Okay, you have no cards in hand. Attack you for lethal.
Okay, that's even better. Sorry. All right.
The just being extra sure, the Hearthstone BM, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's so
Yeah.
good. I love some good Hearthstone BM. Sorry.
Yeah,
So
who doesn't?
we got a little confused there. So I think it's fair to say a lot of our listeners, play at the PBDQ level still and are trying to hit like the bronze and silver stage of things. So what do you think about there, where you really are kind of playing like a mini circuit? You know what I mean? I don't know how it is in Utah, but here I see the same people every PBDQ, and sometimes new faces pop up, but for the most part, I'm playing the same people in the later rounds, right? Like,
Right.
the people that do well at those events are always top 8 in those events. So
Yeah,
what do you think about it there?
I think you can definitely pick up on some little things. I think
I'm hurting my belly so hard right now.
one of the things we'd written about was like paying attention to sequencing, and I think that a lot of the time with players who are maybe just a little less experienced with the deck they're playing, you can kind of catch them in like they'll sort of be lost in thought and then just do things in the order that it comes to them. And sometimes you can get a really good read just because they won't sort of think through the entire turn in advance. They'll just sort of perform one action at a time.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Like I don't know if that makes sense, but like
It does.
with regards to tapping lands, making there are times where you can get a little edge from sort of paying close attention to what your opponent has. All I would really caution is don't read too far into things, because as your opponents also improve at Magic, they'll get better at getting you with things like that.
That's true. So maybe that answers the question I have. I feel like we got a little sidetracked. So you had said, right, like it's really hard to read Seth, right, when he slashes Geovraska, but it might not be so hard to read, let's just say Andrew Elliott. That's someone, I know right? Right? So, like, what do you feel about there, right? Like,
just trolling your friends. So harsh.
I control someone else. So, James Hieronymus. So, I play against, this is actually great. I'm going to call you out, James. James Hieronymus is notorious for reacting to the cards he draws and the cards that are played against him. I have seen him draw an Avacyn when the only card that can beat him is a sweeper, and he just lights up. He's just like, game over, right? And he'll lose because something else where his opponents know, right? And they're like trying to make a play around it or whatever. But he'll also just like, you'll play a Scarab God. This happened in a minute. I played a Scarab God against him. It looked like I told him his puppy died. It was just like the lights left his eyes. He was thinking about like, I wasted my whole day here. I can't beat the Scarab God. What's gonna happen to me, right? So,
Sure.
So I'm not saying this is to bag on James. What I'm saying is, do you feel like you can look into those things more at that level? Which obviously, right, you're practicing something that won't really help you in the long term. But this is an interesting topic that I'm kind of in on, and I want to just finish it before we move on to the rest of the show notes here. So what do you think about that? Like,
so I think that's true. I would just also say that if your opponents at some point realize what's happening,
like James right now as he listens to the show.
yeah, I mean, they can just, it's pretty easy to flip the script on that whole thing. And that's basically the reason that I think really reading into a reaction is mostly something you should avoid doing.
Okay.
I think it's the other kind of thing, right? Like we've all played against players where like you sometimes really, you almost have to sell, you have to walk them into things because
that's your only chance. I lost you.
They'll just have to like tap lands, but like retap something else and untap a blue source, because if you just tap it naturally correctly, they like won't read your bluff of negate at all.
Yeah, because sometimes you are like,
right, where like it's just like the only way to actually bluff something is to be so heavy-handed about it that it's like almost embarrassing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that in the longer term, what you really want to do, I think this kind of goes back to Paulo's article. Often, as you play against players who are better, there's this Paulo article about never giving your opponent like extra choices, right? Because if there's an implied correct choice and they choose the other one, it's because it was better for them, because they're not stupid.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, I kind of lean the same way on this. You have to be very, very careful about bluffing, because it's so likely to backfire in terms of information exchange that my inclination is not to sell hard bluffs when you don't have it, unless it's literally the only way you can possibly win the game.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's very important to, like, everything we talked about, and this happens with a lot of things in Magic and concepts, is, like, knowing when to use them, right? And knowing when to, like, ignore them, right? So, like, an example might be, you play your instant speed spells, Michael, when? At instant speed. But it's also important, like, hey, I should just play my Braid now so that I don't lose the game to the blossoming defense, right?
Right, right. But I think that, you know, there's also something to be said for, like, it's more like, do you want to represent a blossoming defense to try to save a winding constrictor you can't save if your opponent is going to be priced into a braiding anyways?
Yes, no. Right. I agree with that. We're saying that
that's where the because obviously I think walking yourself into a blossoming defense for no reason is probably bad.
Yes.
But I'm more interested in the secret is that so much of the time you're just priced into calling your opponent's bluff anyways.
Yeah.
That I think bluffing tends to be overrated.
Yes. So
and you should instead of the focus on bluffing, we should be more cognizant of what information we give and receive when bluffs are made or when they're called, versus, you know, how can we bluff most effectively? Right? It's like, what is the cost of this bluff?
So I agree 100% with what you're saying, and I'm hoping that what I was saying wasn't getting misconstrued or it's coming out the wrong way. What I was trying to say was there's a lot of things in Magic where like the rule normally is to do exactly what you just said, right? Like, make the optimal play, like, do all these things. You just reiterating what you said, but you also need to know, like, and you said this earlier, when you need to make the bluff, right? You need to know those things. And because if those are going to win you games, but it's much more important to just know that you can do that and not really do it all the time. Does that make sense?
Right. The trick is, like, you can't bluff a negate for a fumigate that your opponent has to cast.
Yes, exactly.
Right? You have to try to bluff something else. You have to either try to bluff something. You have to bluff something that would give them a reason. You have to figure out a reason they could choose not to cast fumigate and play the game that way, or like. And I think that that's a really good point, right? Ultimately, we're trying to figure out what plays could possibly win us a game that we have no business winning.
Yes. No.
Right? And sometimes that means you're going to make some weird plays in games you're losing because the only way you can win is to... So, like, I did this against... I played a match against Corey Burkhart where I ended up losing. I think this was round 13 of Grand Prix Portland or something like that. But I was really proud of how I played. So I basically... I was playing an energy deck and he was playing a cycling, one of the blue-white cycling decks. And in game 3, he resolves an abandoned sarcophagus and he has like double countervailing winds, triple cast out in his graveyard. So it's like a 10 for 1.
Yeah.
And I have an Abrade in my hand, but I draw for my turn and I have like Glint Sleeve Siphoner, Deathgorge Scavenger, or Abrade, and enough mana to cast them all. So I tap so that the only way I can win this game is if he just sort of loses his mind, right? I'm going to need to make him do something really crazy. So I like cast the Deathgorge Scavenger and he counters it with a Countervailing Winds, and then I play the Glint Sleeve Siphoner, leaving up only a Forest and an Aether Hub.
Yeah.
And, you know, he lets it resolve, but on end step he casts it out for mana efficiency, and I Abrade his Abandoned Sarcophagus off the Aether Hub, right? So, like, it's sort of the anti-bluff, right? It's like we're not representing red mana, except in the, you know, most marginal way possible. And honestly, that one energy might have hurt me in that game, missing that energy from having to spend it for red, but I felt like the only way I could possibly win was if I resolved that Abrade, so I had to sell it as hard as I possibly could.
No, I think that's good. Like, I think that is like a good bluff. That's a good example of when you have to bluff.
Right, that sometimes you're just in these desperate spots where you have to make plays that are so counterintuitive or bad because it's the only way you can possibly get the outcome that you're looking for.
Yes. Yeah, I like that a lot. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Are you still?
I think that's sort of what you're trying to take away, right? Like,
Yeah.
you have to be cognizant of what the costs and benefits are to your bluff, because a lot of the times you will bluff a blossoming defense in a situation where you just don't need to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. No, I like that a lot. I think we've kind of wrapped it up.
On the flip side, if you have to cast it, or if you have to have it, then it might be correct to bluff it. It's hard to say.
It's really hard to say, and it's something that you will get better at, I would say, the more you play, and it will be something that you just use less the more you play too, which is weird. It's a weird thing to say, right? Yeah.
Right. Well, what you start to understand is that there's a real cost to presenting these bluffs, and you have to be careful with. You just have to be thoughtful with why you're bluffing at a given spot, or what information you're willing to give your opponent in exchange for the bluff.
Yeah, or you could just be like me, bluff a Harness Lightning, they call you, and then you draw Harness Lightning for turn and do it and win the game. Easy.
Easy, yeah. I mean, when they know that you couldn't possibly have it because you didn't have it last turn when you bluffed it, and then you draw it, it's definitely really powerful.
Yeah. No, that's a silly note to end on. But yeah, I like this training grounds. It was interesting. It went a way that I wasn't quite expecting, but I feel like I got some useful stuff out of it, and I hope the listeners did as well.
I hope it was interesting, and it's something that I'd be happy to answer. If you want to post in the Facebook group or send me a message, I'm happy to try to get into a little further. But I hope it's helpful, and I think that one of the really fun things about trying to play Magic at a high level, or just the highest level that you can, is that you really get to do a lot of deep thinking about sort of what are the repercussions of my action. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really fun. It's really fun to try to think through what could my opponent have, and what could I make them play around, and what do I have to play around. I think that's a really good time.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Magic's an awesome game. It's truly great.
It is. Just the level of depth is kind of astounding sometimes. You'll just be playing a game and you sort of realize how many levels deep you are.
Yep, 100% agree. It's kind of like of the deep levels of love and how great we think of our patrons over at patreon.com. If you feel like this show is giving something to you and you want to give back, feel free to. The show will always be free. We want to use the Patreon to help increase the show. Hopefully this week's audio is better, right, Michael? This is the first week we've used Audacity while also recording the video version. So hopefully...
Yeah, it'll be interesting. We tried to sync it up as best we could. Spencer, I'm sure, will be able to get it synced up the rest of the way. But it'll be interesting to hear how it sounds. Hopefully it's an improvement for you guys. And
if not, though, I think we figured out the background noise thing with it being Michael. Because it doesn't pop up in its Audacity. But if it does, then I think I have an idea. But we'll see. Whatever. Hopefully it's all going to be fixed. If not this week, by next week. We're doing stuff like that. We're helping out, and you get some pretty cool words.
We're working on it, right?
Yep.
We're trying here. We really are.
Yep. So, Michael, if someone wants to tweet at you how they soul-read Pro Tour champion, Platinum Pro, and former World Champion Seth Mansfield, where can they do that?
Well, Mason, you can tweet at me at MagicMikeMTG. You can also send me a Facebook message or post in the Constructive Criticism family. My name is Michael Hitterucker.
Awesome. And your Twitter name is MagicMikeMTG, is that right?
Yeah, I think I led with that, but maybe I didn't.
I don't know. You broke up for a second for me, so you might have said that.
Yeah,
I'm not,
yeah.
Sorry.
No, my Twitter is at MagicMikeMTG.
Which is a great Twitter handle, by the way. It is awesome. If you want to message me how I am a fool for playing this rug brew of mine, you can message me on Twitter at Mason E. Clark. The one on screen is my old Twitter handle. I haven't got a new graphic for it yet, but hopefully soon we will by the next time I'm on the show in the future. And if you want to message me on Facebook, I'm in the Constructive Criticism family and critics group. I'm always there. I'm always talking, always trolling Spencer with gifts. It's really the way I want to live my life, is trolling Spencer. And I want to apologize. So last week on the show, I assumed wrong that Spencer had the flu. He'd been dying for a couple days. He couldn't talk. Kept posting on Facebook how I'm dying. I assumed it was the flu. It was not the flu. He has bronchitis. That's why he's still not here. So don't be. I hope no one was worried this whole show that like Spencer's been gone for like 2 weeks now during this flu epidemic. He just has bronchitis. He will almost assuredly be back for LTO, and if not, he'll definitely be back for CC next week. So you won't have to hear my beautiful voice again. Which,
yeah, Spencer just needed the week. He is mostly better, but his voice is just still not quite there.
Yep, and he really misses doing the show, and he really wants to do it with y'all. And, I hope you've enjoyed my time as guest hosting every CC show for the last month. It's been fun. I've had a good time doing it. But let's move on to hashtag Would That Be Good. Hashtag Would That Be Good is our Twitter outreach program. If you tweet it, Spencer will read it. And since I'm Spencer this week, I'm going to ask Michael to help me because my throat's sore. So
okay.
let's
I think I found...
It's a way back because we haven't done it in 3 weeks.
Oh, if we not... Well,
because
we're not
we
going to
skipped
go back
a week.
that far.
No, I'm going back to this December 29th one because I know this is the last one that was tweeted. There aren't that many. Come on. You skipped it last week. We were only an hour 5 in the show. Come on.
80 people. Jared Poole tweets 80 people in my FNM for Modern tonight. Hashtag biggest FNM ever. Hashtag would that be good. How many rounds is that?
Oh, it's 4 still. Unless I don't think they do top 8 and stuff. I mean, some stores do that. Ours doesn't.
That's just so many rounds. That's crazy. So many people.
Does sponsor Oasis Games do top 8 of FNM, or they just like prize pack you out of there?
No, we'll do top 8 if we get enough.
Okay.
For that to make sense.
We never do that.
We've never had 80 for an FNM, so
My first FNM I ever went to, Michael, was 104 people.
That's insane.
Yeah.
We had I ran the midnight pre-release and we had 92, I think.
Wow.
And that was pretty big.
Yeah, that is big.
Yeah, 92 for midnight seems like a lot, but 80 for FNM is insane.
Yep. So Spencer Hallen tweets goodbye snake emoji, hello dinosaur emoji, hashtag MTG, hashtag would that be good, and it's a picture of Dino Growth, which is the name I was taken. It is one in a green. I don't know its actual name because I can't see in the picture. It's additional cost. Oh, it's in the name. Thunder Herd Migration. If you reveal a dinosaur, it costs one less. I'm sorry. If you don't reveal a dinosaur, it costs 1 more to cast it, and you get a basic land you put on the battlefield. So it's rampant growth for dinosaurs. We didn't get to talk about this in the set review last week, Michael. What do you think of that card?
It's interesting. It's certainly more interesting now that we don't have, like, this clearly is not playable in a world of Temur Energy, but it might be playable now. I don't know. I still think you need to play a lot of dinosaurs before this is really where you want to be, and that's a tough sell to me. I don't know that there are, like, 15 dinosaurs I really want to play, but, it's definitely a powerful card.
Yeah, it's definitely very interesting and very powerful. This next one, I don't remember what it is, so I'm just going to skip that. We're going to go straight to the tokens. So the tokens are here! And we've got a picture of Michael Hindrocker, the GOAT. That's why you made yours the GOAT, right? Because you're the GOAT. And then you also have your Spencer Halland Dragon token, which is a 4/4.
Yeah, I told Casey to just make me a goat instead of making me like a human goat. Mm-hmm. And I really enjoy that it's just actually just like a goat token with my name.
well, it's kind of got a pondering look, right? Which I would equate with you. But besides that, it has brown hair, and that's the only similarity.
I can sign them so they say fascinating. But
by the way,
that's about it.
So I just want to say with this real quick. If you've ever been a patron of the show, Spencer wants to send you tokens because they have a bunch. It's something that he wanted to do, and it kind of fell through last year, and he wants to get them out there. So hopefully he's got in touch with you, and if you want them, just message him and he'll send them to you. Michael, I want mine signed. I was a patron of the show for 3 months, and I never got my tokens. And
you want it to say fascinating?
I want it to say fascinating. And if you could just ship it with my next Oasis Games order when I use hashtag CCMTG to get 4% back, that would be great.
Will do.
All right.
I'm in for that one. Just leave it in the order notes.
Oh, I will. I 100% will. I'm going to buy some cards after we're done here. I'm going to get me some. I'm not going to get Jade Light Rangers, actually, because someone messaged me, local area, that said they have them. But I'm going to get something from you.
Yeah, we won't have any of the rival stuff until Friday, but we should have some stock then.
Boom. All right, Michael, do you want to get this next one?
Yeah, absolutely. Matt says, celebrating my partner's birthday with a little bit of screen door. Hashtag, would that be good? Hashtag chicken and waffles. I mean, it looks great.
What's Screen Door? Is that a restaurant?
It is a restaurant. It's like soul food in Portland.
Oh.
And it is phenomenal.
All right. That's awesome.
So I'm pretty jealous.
Yeah, that looks good. I'm all about it. I'm not a huge chicken and waffles person. I'm more of a pancake guy.
No,
but I'm about it.
their chicken is outrageously good though. Like some of the best chicken you will ever eat.
That's high praise.
It's very, very good. If you have a chance to go there, I would strongly recommend it.
Well, isn't there going to be a PT in Portland or something like that, or a GP? I don't know. But,
I don't know. I mean, there was just a GP in Portland like 2 months ago.
Oh, that's what I'm
Except
thinking.
that day one ran so late that we didn't get to go there.
Oh, that was the miserable one.
Yeah, day one went till like 10:30 p.m. So
yeah,
kind of sucked because that was something I was really looking forward to. But you know, instead I just have Matt tweeting wonderful pictures at me.
Yep. So
that being said, the chicken look, man, I'm very jealous.
So this is going to lead to a series of Titans tweets and football tweets, I think, from Spencer and Andrew here. But let's start them off. Andrew Elliott tweets, at Titans just completed the comeback of the century to advance 22-21 over Kansas City. Hashtag Titans up. Hashtag would that be good. Now, I'm not a big sports ball fan, but this is my understanding, Michael, is that my home team barely beat this Kansas City, as said by the tweet. And then we were paired against the cheaters, the Patriots, right? The Bertuccinis of the world. And now my team is no longer in the sports ball finals. We got booted out of top 8 because of bad judge calls, and now we're here. That's my understanding. Is that true?
Oh man, you should be glad Spencer isn't on this week. He would be losing his mind. But I appreciate the trolling while he's, not here to cut you down.
I'm not trolling. I'm just trying to understand the topic of the sports ball.
Also, if you really want to see a truly great comeback, you can go to my Facebook page and watch Stephon Diggs score a touchdown set to the Titanic music.
That sounds awesome.
It's one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my life.
I will say,
yeah.
So I don't really like football that much, but during that Kansas City game, our quarterback threw a ball. It got hit, and then our guy caught it and then touchdown.
Oh,
I
saw
cool.
that. I saw that.
Was awesome.
Mariota caught a touchdown pass to himself.
That's how bad our offense
which
is.
I don't believe has ever happened before in the playoffs.
It happened once. I saw
in the playoffs? I think it might have happened once ever, but I don't think it's happened in the playoffs.
I know it's happened at least once before because it's a big deal in Tennessee, right? It was for 24 hours.
It's pretty rare. You just think about the physics of it. You throw a ball and it gets deflected, but you're also running kind of sideways and forward, so when it goes into your own hands, you're,
moving the ball forward.
Surprise touchdown. Yeah, it was sweet.
Yeah,
it's just one of those things that you're not going to get to see that often.
Yeah, it was awesome. So Jared Poole here has got my first 7-win draft in at Eternal Card Game. I'm super excited to finally get there. Drafted a sweet Stone Scar deck. My only loss came in an accident against account named LSV number 3. So if I'm going to lose, might as well be to the hands of one of the greatest ever. Hashtag always improving. Hashtag would that be good. Michael, do you play this game?
I haven't played Eternal at all, but I've heard people say mostly good things about it, so maybe I'll have to check it out at some point.
That's what I've heard. I can't invest that much into another card game. Like, Hearthstone I can play, and I don't have to think on my opponent's turn. Eternal I do. That's so much work. All right.
Yeah, it's just the time. Magic just takes so much of my time already.
Yep. Andrew Elliott tweets, the clean 8-0, 4-0 tonight in standard for the first time with Teamer Scarab God, better known as Teamer Black if you're a normal person. More importantly, played versus the sweet red-black pirate deck. Deck looks spicy. Hashtag would that be good.
But it didn't win a game against you, so, clearly it wasn't that good.
Yeah, it was so spicy that you were somehow able to beat him with your Scarab God deck, huh?
Shocker. Well, I hope that you enjoyed your last 8-0-4-0 with Teamer Scarab God.
Yeah,
hope you got it out of your system.
Let's be honest for a second. So I was streaming on Twitch before this, and you were on there while I was setting up the show, and you were talking about how you want to play 4-color Teamer without a tune and stuff. So this might not be the end. You might be doing it.
Well, that's probably not going to happen. I mean, it's probably bad.
Okay.
But, if you don't want to play all the colors, I don't know what to tell you.
All right, what's we got up next here, Jared?
Excited for my late Christmas gift from my sister. Going to be my new limited MTG box with basic lands all sleeved up and ready with tokens, etc.
Oh, I like
And
the
he
Ultimate Guard
tweets a
box.
picture of the Flip and Tray Ultimate Guard boxes. I really like the. We started getting the Sidewinders,
Those are pretty cool.
and they're real nice. The magnets are really strong. I like those a lot.
Yeah.
I've been really happy with mine. And the 100, I have a Legacy deck that's in that's double sleeved in Perfect Hards, which I don't know if you've seen those before, but they are really thick.
Yeah.
And it still fits in there. So
Dang.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think those products are really nice.
Yeah, I love my Ultimate Guard. The one I have has like the little dice thing on top, and that's great.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So he doesn't hold like a 100 card deck, but for events, it's perfect. I have everything I need in one spot. So
Yeah, those are nice. I think all their stuff's a little bit expensive, but it's pretty nice.
and there goes the sponsorship. All right. No, I agree.
I mean,
you're paying for a nicer product, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Craftsmanship, Michael. That's what Cedric Phillips would say. All right. So,
Well, he's also being paid to say that.
Michael, are you implying that Cedric would say something because the sponsor reel said it to? I would never say that about any of the places. Like Oasis Games, I just truly believe that in my heart. Nah, I'm joking. Yes.
I mean,
yeah.
I'm not,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to throw shade. I think the products are really nice. They're just on the more expensive side.
I just wanted to have a little fun, Michael. Why'd you have to shoot me down?
Fair enough. All right.
Speaking of a little fun, I tweeted "Live the dream" multiple times today. It was as good as advertised. Hashtag would that be good? And it is
Tomb Robber and Lurking Chupacabra, so every card in your hand becomes like a little mini. You get to basically like Herald of Anguish people.
yes. So for those who don't know, Tomb Robber is a new rare from Rivals. It's 2 and a black human pirate menace 1/1, and you can pay 1 and discard a card to explore. And Lurking Chupacabra says whenever you explore -2/-2 target creature an opponent controls. So,
How good? How good do you think Tomb Robber is without Lurking Chupacabra?
It was fun. I thought of it as a way that so my deck was really heavy on Tetsamok and Burning Sun's Avatar as a way to win the game.
Sure.
So I needed a way to get there, and so I felt like I feel like it's pretty good, right? Like the rate isn't amazing at a 1/1 for 3. Like you're never super excited, but it can pull you out of games that you had no business being in.
Yeah,
So-
you can kind of do some like rummaging goblin style
Yes.
shenanigans, right?
Yeah, and it
But
grows.
but like with a little more like if you have like 4 lands in a row, you can just like cycle.
Yeah, exactly. I would say that
Interesting.
I was going to say it's probably about as good as Rummaging Goblin, because even though it does grow, you need to have the mana up front. With like Rummaging Goblin, you just need to pay the 1 time
Right.
and then you start going.
I would guess it's a little bit better than that, just because I found red to be relatively aggressive, and sometimes Rummaging Goblin is a little awkward in some of those decks.
That's fair. I just think the format's going to be fast, and so like
That might be true.
yeah,
But,
the
but
mana.
having
punch.
but this is like a real way to kill someone too. Like if they just can't kill it over a few turns, like a menace 3/3 or 4/4 is kind of a beating.
That is true. It definitely does. I want to say though, every time I played Lurching Chupacabra, my opponent's like, "Which one do you want to kill?" I'm like, "No, that's not the right Chupacabra. I have to earn it with this one." Which was
If it was also an ATB, that would be so much better.
oh my god, yeah, the card would be great. It'd
Yeah.
be awesome. All right, let's see here. Andrew Elliott tweets, went 3-5 in my 2 pre-release events this weekend. Definitely got to improve before the GP this weekend and the RPTQ. Do I get to count my brother's wins if I built his deck? Lol, hashtag would that be good? To which I have already answered this with a tweet with a gif of Taylor Swift saying no. So,
No.
doesn't count.
Yeah.
Because your brother clearly played better than you, right, with the deck you built him. So he's not going to be there at the GP, unless he's your teammate. But I don't think he is. I think those are just the facts, Michael. Do you agree? I need the hard yes.
I mean, so like at a team GP, I don't really care what my record is. Like, we're on the get there plan.
Yeah. Well,
If that involves me being the one who's getting carried, I'm in for that. If that involves me being Jacob Wilson,
yeah.
I can live with that. I'll take one for the team.
Yeah, no, I if you told me right now, like, hey, your team's going to do as well as that team, but you have to be Jacob Wilson, I'm like, let's go. Like, I'm going to jump on Danny's back. That was the plan to begin with.
I'm super in for getting carried. I mean, who isn't? That's the dream. You don't even have to win. You just show up.
Mm-hmm. Oh, this is a shot call, Michael. What do you think about this one? Vikings versus Pats in the Super Bowl. Pats win 34-28. Brady retires. Hashtag called shot. Hashtag would that be good?
So flip Pat's win.
Yep.
Brady still retires because he's embarrassed.
Ooh. Hashtag burn. Michael's just gonna. I mean, Spencer's gonna edit this part out, right, Michael? Like all these.
I mean, probably.
Yeah, but we know, and if we keep talking about it, it becomes harder for him to edit out the things we're saying because we're mentioning them later in the show.
Yeah, because it's just it's also just like it's like a majority of the cast at this point.
Yeah, the entire thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
if you've been
exactly.
listening and haven't heard Pat's burns the entire time, probably some hashtag fake news from Spencer. Speaking of which, this one says hashtag would that be good, and that's it. Oh, I'm not about this.
Spencer tore up his Attune with Aethers, but like, that's I don't know.
That's bad value. What if you ever want to play Kaladesh Limited? Like you want to build your own cube? What if you want to play Legacy or Modern? Do you know Sean McLaren, Michael, back on the 4th of July, America's birthday, posted a Marvel deck list that changed the face of Modern?
What did he do?
He posted a Marvel deck list that was sweet. It was the first person I've ever seen post a Marvel deck list in Modern, and I don't know. I just thought I'd bring it up. I don't know. I don't like ripping my cards and stuff like that. If they break because of whatever. Twinster's just trying to get that sweet meme value, though. We know. I'm down for the memes, though.
I mean, tearing up Attune with Aethers is, I don't know, a little hardcore for me.
Maybe saying he wasn't attuned with the Aether anymore.
No longer. I don't know.
Oh, it all makes sense now. Oh my gosh. Michael, this one's next about you. Well, how about you read it?
All right. Andrew tweets, my wife is watching the CCMTG cast and she said that I have a very pretty voice. And then Andrew says, yeah, I'll admit his voice is big. But having heard my own voice, I have to strongly disagree with that. Although, I mean, to be fair, hearing your own voice is like always weird and uncomfortable. Yeah. I don't know that that's something anyone ever gets over.
Yeah, definitely.
I always wonder about that. Do PA announcers get over that, or do like what about guys doing commercials? Do they like hear their own voice and they're like, "Oh man, I sound so weird."
They hope they sound like generic, and it's gonna sound bad, like American. You know what I mean? Like that's the dream. Yeah. You're like, I'm so generic.
But they still hear their voice and they're like, "Oh man, this just sounds." I always wonder that.
Probably. I used to be super self-conscious about my voice, and so sometimes it's hard for me, and I still have those moments. But I want to talk about that moment because Spencer put that in the chat, the CC chat. This isn't tweeted. Hey Mason, my wife said you have like a great podcasting voice, and I legitimately felt moved because I just told you guys about how as a younger person I had a lot of self-conscious and anxiety about that, and then I see that Andrew tweeted this about 30 minutes earlier, and I wonder. Did Dev really say this? And the doubt got me to my core. I believe she said it because Dev's a great person who loves pineapple on her pizza. But Andrew tweeted, whereas she said at Mason Clark is cute in that annoying little brother way. I'm laughing way too hard right now. Hashtag would that be good? So now I'm curious. Did Spencer only say that because of that, or was it a coincidence that two different people's wives were talking about my voice? I mean,
Dev is just actually really nice.
No, every interaction I've had with Dev is great. So. Which is only like 4, and one of them she was convinced I was 17. But, I
mean,
that's life.
I don't know. Yeah, I assume people think I'm younger than I am all the time.
Oh, yeah, I thought Michael was a solid 26 until I knew.
Well, I mean, that actually is my age, but,
I thought Michael was 27 until right now. I was trying to make a joke. All right, we got left awkward. And then we have, the last one is, I think this is the first deck I'm playing when I get home and streaming tonight. Hashtag would that be good? And it's the Teamer.
It's just Teamer Energy. I appreciate the meme value of this deck. Like when you're playing your opponents in a league and they're just, I'm sure people are just like kind of laughing and then kind of tilting alternately.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're like, wait, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just playing against the same deck as always.
Yeah.
Nothing changes. Boom.
In my first stream game, I play. Spire Bluff turn 1. I'm like, all right, my opponent's thinking maybe he's playing against a red-green, like a blue-red control deck or a Grixis deck, right? And then I hit him with the Force Long Tusk Cup, and they're like, no! So they got
I enjoy that.
All right, well, that is the show for this week. It was a blast, Michael. Hopefully Spencer's back next week, and they won't hear from me again till the Pro Tour when you're gone.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully Spencer is feeling better. But it was a good time. I mean, a good time doing the set review and this week with you. And I hope that was helpful for everyone. And I hope that our audio quality is better.
Yes, definitely. So thank you everyone for listening, and we will see you amigos next time.
All right, should I stop?
I paused it right like at the end there. So if yours is longer, it's fine because
Okay.
it
I just stopped mine as well.
Okay, yeah, because he's gonna put the outro music and he'll layer it over top.
Oh, okay.
Because that's how he used to do it back when the show was. So I'm assuming it's
Okay,
the same. So do we click the yellow stop button? You lagging so fucking hard right
I
now.
clicked the yellow stop. Clicked the yellow stop button.
Okay. How do we save it then?
And then you press export, and I think we have to export it as an MP3.
I don't even see
Or is
export.
it file export?